The objective was to make the game as safe as we could, to improve the safety standards, to make MRI scans compulsory.
Absolutely, for licensing
rather than just brain scans, MRI scans, to bring in psychometric testing, to bring in all of the have paramedics ringside, have the nearest neurosurgical hospital within an hour's drive, to have 2 ambulances on big shows. All of that, we worked with the Board of Control, and they were brilliant. They embraced all of it, and it was much more costly, as you will know. But we set the standards so high, medical standards so high, that we improved the game, and I've no doubt saved lives. And that was as a result of me, young Ali, losing his life in a fight with me.
Do you think it is a safer sport now?
Without a doubt.
In what way?
The standards have got much better. Fighters are not allowed to box. For example, years gone by, they didn't have brain scans. You could have a shadow or a blemish on your brain scan
just get on with it.
And get on with it and fight, and suddenly he gets a subdural hematoma.
But they're not doing scans enough now.
They are. They're doing amazing stuff. So
not as much.
No, they are. No.
Really?
You're wrong.
Okay,
Simon.
I have this conversation with Robert Smith at the British Boxing Board of Control.
The British Boxing Board of Control have set the standard for many of the organisations all over the world. There's no doubt about it. In New York State, Los Angeles, they have very, very good. You find that where a lot of good sports are taking place, the standards are very good. They don't have fights in sort of in wayward places anymore. They have them, and if they don't, they bring their medical team with them. So the standards are great.
At the higher level,
at the highest level, they're good the whole way down, because for example, now you can't weigh in. Most of the time you weigh in the day before the fight. I think 90% of the fights, and then you're allowed to rehydrate between Friday and Saturdays, for example.
But look, they're getting rehydration clauses. It only allows them to rehydrate to a certain level, so they are closing those windows.
Yes, so they are. And I think at that stage, the governing bodies have to say, and this is the biggest issue with boxing, the biggest problem, and I know you're talking about your interest in it and everything else. What the sports needs is one organisation. It's never going to happen, but they need one firm organisation all around the world that says, these are the rules. You cannot break these rules. You cannot bend it here and squeeze it and make it thin there and make it fat here. You've got to abide by these rules. And they have to be answerable and accountable. But that's unlikely to happen.
But I spent a lot of time. I'm spending a lot of time looking at this industry, looking at the sport, because I can look at it through objective eyes.
Yes.
I may well get involved with Ben. I may well get involved with Frank. I may well do it myself.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm studying. I'm talking to people. I'm collecting knowledge. I'm understanding the sport. I've got this moniker for the British Boxing Board of Control, because I think it's a British Boxing Board of no control.
Right.
I don't think they're doing their jobs properly. Right. I don't think they're paying enough attention to detail.
Yeah.
I don't think the idea that fighters, and I want to run this past you because Bellew mentioned it to me, and it's in the same space as I think, there should be a retention from fighters' purses that's mandatory, that goes towards aftercare, that goes towards their pensions, that goes towards medical support. And there doesn't seem to be.
We tried all that. I tried all that with the
But
PBA.
the British Boxing Board of Control have the governance.
They have the governance.
So they should have the balls to say to the fighters, if you want to be licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control, then as a matter of course, for your own benefits, we're going to withhold 5% of whether you're getting paid £1,500 a round or you're getting paid X amount per fight.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good idea, but
tell me why it doesn't work.
I can't tell you why it doesn't work. It probably because they don't implement it, and I'm not sure if they did implement it that it would go down very well. That's probably why.
But if you're the governing body,
I get that.
If you're the governing body, and as we're seeing now, there's various challenges, because I said it to Robert Smith and I said it to Eddie Hearn the other day. How does this sport work then? Is it at the very top of the tree is the promoter, then the fighter, for governance, by the way, promoter, fighter, then the media, and right at the bottom, the people that have got no authority and jurisdiction, the British Boxing Board of Control, because it seems to me that you're getting pushed around by promoters, you're getting pushed around by the nature of the industry that you're in, and you don't seem to be controlling things. And I was talking specifically about bad decisions with Bradley Skeet, right, who I know you know, and I thought he was treated preposterously by the British Boxing Board of Control and the referee in that fight. Right. The nature of the Conor Benn situation and what's manifested itself there, and a raft of other things. And I feel quite strong, and I'm not invested in the sport the way you are. I feel quite strongly that a governing body should govern and should be looking to the best interests of the most valuable part of the sport, which is the fighters.
Yes. No, it is a difficult job, and I think by and large the board do a pretty decent job. They do a pretty decent job. But they can't be everything to everybody. And I think they need help. Do they need government support? And does there need to be an independent legislation? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated. There are 1,000 fighters, probably 1,000 fighters, active fighters in the UK. They're probably not big enough to do the job that you want, to be answerable to everybody.
I think they're well intended.
I think they are well intended.
I think they're well intended. I think legislation, and given the fact, because I want to talk to you about current events, and we're going to talk about, in this instance, about, say, Conor Benn.
Right.
And UCAD. As someone, I mean, I assume you love your sport.
Love it. Yes.
What do you make to this statistic that boxing has less out of competition tests for fighters than cycling does?
No, it's appalling.
64 out of competition tests from over 1,000 licensed fighters in this country. UCAD is clearly not serious enough about doping in boxing.
Simon, I have a zero tolerance for banned substances. In boxing, it's too dangerous a sport to allow that sort of stuff to exist. So, if you're one strike and you're out, that's it.
But how do you square that circle then with all these great champions we've got out there that have failed drugs tests?
Like?
Canelo Alvarez.
Right.
Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
And they have their bans. They serve their bans. Because there is a difference, isn't there? There is a difference between knowingly taking something that enhances you and mistakenly taking something.
I'm not sure.
Do you not subscribe to that at all?
I don't believe that. Particularly in a sport like boxing, you watch every morsel that goes into your mouth.
Right.
Because it's weight, and you're watching your weight, and that's the most important thing to boil down to weight. So I don't go for that. So I don't accept that they don't know, they take it inadvertently. I don't believe that. I think vast majority of people who take it because they want to take it to enhance their performance. And my attitude is, and again, I'm not pointing the finger at any of those fighters. I'm saying if you're caught, and you're clearly caught, you're out.
One strike and you're out.
Absolutely.
So you must have a dim view. I'm not looking for controversy here, but you must have a dim view of some of the bullshit that's going on with some of these promoters that are trying to license fighters somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of, you've got a fight can't be made in this country. The British Boxing Board of Control, and fair play to Robert, is standing his ground.
Yes.
And also going to Chris Eubank Jr. and say, by the way, if you go and fight in Saudi over there, we're going to take your license away potentially because you're in good standing with us and you need our permission and you won't be able to fight on these shores again.
Yeah.
You must have a dim view, because I do.
Yeah.
I think it's preposterous that fights are going to be made without people clearing their names.
I think it's, if you take performance-enhancing drugs,
it's the end of the discussion.
It's the end of your career.
Yeah.
It's in boxing. If I'm making a judgment on that, that's it. You're out.
Yeah.
You're never allowed to come back in again. If you have the audacity to do that, you're done.
Was it around when you were around?
I don't think it was. No. I think it probably was. I mean, they said that, there were various other Olympic athletes, and obviously I've got to be careful, who were taking stuff and that sort of stuff. The East Germans apparently were loaded on it when they were performing, but, they were very sophisticated at it. They were obviously very definite about what they were doing, and they had a whole program, and kids were brought in and trained and given stuff and everything else. So they were very good at it. And I know that there obviously were certain people who took it, but I thankfully never came across it myself.